Hello, hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here, Basketball Rewind, and I am here again to talk about more prospects, which everyone seems to be more excited about than whatever is happening with the Raptors season. But today, again, we are here to talk about prospects. I am joined today by Beyond the Locker Room. I will leave his information, his handle in the comment down below. Again, as I say always, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have any other prospects that ideally are in the Raptors range, of course, if that changes, with the draft lottery coming up, who knows if the Raptors don't make the playoffs, we could be getting Wemby. So people, stay tuned in. Don't bet on this stuff because know your limit, stay within it. And with that being said, we're here to talk about Jarace Wallace. So, Beyond, you saw that I had written notes on several prospects, one of them being Jarace Wallace today. So, with that being said, I'm going to give a small bio about Jarace Wallace. Now, I don't know wingspans for sure until the combine comes out, people. And only for those who participate in the combine. So hopefully he participates. I think he will be a participant. But from what I can see, he has a long wingspan, and I would say it looks like it's a 7 foot wingspan. I'll also give him his height. His height is 6'8". Sound familiar? His weight 230, and he at the time of being drafted will be about 19.8, or in other words, just shy of 20 years old when drafted. So, with that being said, does this not sound like a Raptors player, people? Um, we should probably start off by talking about his offense. I've written some notes, but I'm wondering if you have any, if you want me to start, or if you want to start off talking about his
No, by all
offense.
means, I'll take the lead. Please do. I mean, I'll just be upfront with everybody. It's not my favorite option. Let's put it this way for the Raptors. Nothing wrong with the young man. I wish him a long, healthy career. We'll get into more details of what my concerns are with him. But please take the lead.
You will like my comp for him at some point, which is because I do have a comp for him, and you may we'll see if you laugh, and we'll see if you actually like it as well. So the thing with Wallace, sorry, I'm just pulling up his ringer page here on this side, but for offense, what I notice is that he's a strong two-way athlete. There's no way about it. He is probably not the best athlete. There will be a guy that hopefully when coach comes back in one of the next episodes, we will talk about who is more of an athlete than him, but he is one of the better athletes in this draft. He has what I would term functional athleticism on both ends, although his lateral quickness is okay. But on defense, his lateral quickness is more than ample. Um, this kind of allows him to have more time to translate different skills into an NBA level if drafted. Because if you have the athleticism and if you can work in the right situation under a different coach, or sorry, whoops, Freudian slip there, under the right coach, I should say, it will help him flourish into a role. But you need a team that is willing to be both patient with him and the right situation. So with that being said, to talk more directly about his athleticism, because I know it sounds like I'm dancing around the subject, because I am, because in my opinion it's a little lacking. I will say he did show a solid handle. He did improve as a shooter. He takes smart shots. He's a decent shooter, but not a great shooter per se. And then what I noticed is that he struggled primarily off the dribble, taking shots. So he's not one of those movement shooters like Grady Dick or Jordan Hawkins, who we might cover at some point. But he's a decent shooter, especially with set shots, which is good. I think that that's really good. He has the athleticism to potentially be a three-level scorer, but he would need a lot of work to get there. He had a low assist percentage, so I believe it was 12%. If I remember correctly, I said GTJs a while ago, so I think GTJ's assist percentage in college was 12%. And then, just to kind of go on the scoring, unless you want to chime in really quickly, is really quickly, I noticed that he was able to. So here are my concerns. Charity stripe, something that we already are not great at. He shot 61%, so that's where I worry. On catch and shoots, his points per possession was 1.06, which is good, but when you compare it to someone who we will talk about at another time, like Cam Whitmore, who shot 1.54 and was in the 90th percentile for that type of same opportunity, I would venture to say that at the very bare minimum, it was positive output, but it's output that needs work. That being said, when he has enough room to get the juice to go downhill, motor is not an issue. He finished fairly strong. They are what they he is what they would call an interior scoring threat. And I think the final thing that I will say is that he has shown a good feel for the game and a good ability to be a good passer. But we will get into his playmaking in a little bit. Thoughts on his offense?
I would say two things. I'll start with the fact that I think of all the players in the lottery, that me he seemed might be the most physically imposing of all the
Yep.
guys. He plays with a ruggedness that a lot of the other guys are in this draft. Quite honestly, almost all of them in this case do not play with a certain type of ruggedness, aggression you mentioned before that I think is going to serve him well with certain teams that they are missing that element to their game. Um, maybe he might be I don't think he's skilled in this case in my mind around the hoop, but you can maybe make a comp to somehow the Duran from last year a little bit, but I don't know if he's as skilled around the hoop as Duran. Duran's probably a little more
Gotcha.
physically imposing overall. If Duran like a man amongst boys in this case, a lot of times watching him in college, I don't see that. That doesn't pop out at me as much with him, but there is a little bit of that element. I think at times in this case here, I do question around the touch, the finesse with him a little bit. It still seems a bit raw, a little bit from the offensive skill set standpoint, and we won't get too much. And I guess maybe you kind of brought up the fit with the Raptors. I think there's the word duplication starts coming up a lot in my mind in this case when I see him. As you said before, yeah, he's got Raptors prototype written all over it. You're just sitting there
Yeah.
going, oh, no, you can see it coming. If he happens to drop a couple spots, you can just see the momentum. It's rolling downhill. That's gonna happen. And as I said before, I have no issue with him as a player or anything like that. I just think for this particular team, that is like one of the last draft picks I would hope they would select because I think he doesn't provide anything new to the team that we have right now.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that in this case. Like I said before, I think in a lot of ways he will help some other teams that don't have that type of element to them. But I think his game still needs a lot of work on that side of it, the ball, the offensive side. So yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and I agree with everything that you said. I'll just quickly go through his playmaking. In my opinion, it seems like this might just because we agree on everything. This might be a shorter episode per se. And yeah, I could actually see why he might be one of the prospects that might actually fall relative to others who might rise in this draft. Not because of anything, but as you hear us talk about it, and you look at the teams that are, you go to your tankathon.com and you look at the teams that are, say 1 through 10, because he has been projected as high as 6th and as low as 10th by a lot of mock drafts.
Mhm.
There's a reason why, but I don't think he fits in every single instance and every single situation. So to get to his playmaking, yeah, the assist to turnover ratio for a lot of these guys that are in college or in a certain situation, it wasn't phenomenal, but it wasn't like a negative. It wasn't bad. But what I did notice while watching the tape is that, in my opinion, he was good at making quick decisions. He was really adept to making lay down and as well as the short roll passes. That was kind of impressive. And a lot of guys have talked about how, whether it's Sam Vecini or others, have talked about his ability to make short roll, or sorry, not just short roll, but passing opportunities and exploit them. So I've heard of certain comps. I mean, I'm just going to quickly pull up the Ringer one. Carl Landry. That is a little bit of a throwback for some of the younger viewers, but I actually see it. I think it's a yeah, I think it's a fair comp.
Deep cut
Um,
there.
yeah, so the defense we will get to in a second, and I think that that's where we'll probably have a much deeper, more richer discussion, and that's really why he's comped so high. But yeah, so I think that his feel for the game and his high IQ on both ends, that is part of why he has been rated as very high and why some people really, really believe in him a lot. I mean, we talked about Gigi Jackson. Gigi Jackson is probably a much more polished offensive player, in my opinion. But in terms of the feel and understanding and having the body for the game, I think he's there. But again, Gigi Jackson's like barely 18 years old. So with that being said, the other thing that's really important, and I really like this about him, is he's able to understand mismatches, both his own and others. And so he's not, the ball does not necessarily stick with him, and I like that. That's something that we do need on this team. And I wrote this, all in all, he's a Raptor style player, but he may not provide instant offensive juice that you may want or need within the next 2 years.
Mhm.
So before I get to his defense, do you have any more thoughts, or do you want to just go straight to defense?
Straight to defense, because I want to jump off the point you mentioned about the IQ, which that did pop for me in this case. Like he has the ability, to your point, like you know, see figure out what matchups in this case when a teammate's in distress. In this case, with a matchup, he knows how to keep an eye on things on the weak side if he happens to be on that side. Like he knows where to be on defense. And I think on that side of the ball, he definitely would fit well from a Raptor fit from depending on what the situation is from a coaching standpoint. But if we assume that the coaching staff we have here, like the complexity of the defensive schemes that we have here, I think he would pick them up very quickly and fit right in. Of course, he has the switchability elements that everyone these days is looking for. The athleticism shows itself, as you said before, a lot more on that end of the court, in my mind, than it does on the offensive side of the court. Where it really, where you see where it really pops, and that's where I see the physicality, the imposing part of him coming in there. Like he's not someone you're kind of you got he's a guy you can have your head on the swivel if he's on the weak side. You're just looking and feeling for him because he's coming, and you think you got a shot on a turnaround jump shot, and then whoops. So he's that type of guy where it's like you can beat the other guy clean, and all of a sudden there he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he cleans up a lot of mess for his team in this case this year on that side of the ball. So I think that, to your point, that is where his value really kind of shines, and where you can see where certain teams at right now. And let's face it, a lot of teams in this case in the top 10 of the draft usually are not good in defense. That's usually just a fact. So that's the reason why, folks, you ask you why he's so high up. That's the reason why, because he can make
Yes.
several jumps and help you improve your defense by maybe 4 or 5 slots, maybe 6 slots in this case when you next season. So, and he get picked out quite quickly, I think.
Precisely. Now, I will go on a quick aside here about versatility. Now, people like to use versatility, and I think versatility and portability are two skills and two terms that I think that I like. That said, I do think sometimes people use defensive versatility and use it as a be all and oh, this guy guards everyone, so thus he's a good defender. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, but if you dig into the numbers, he might not be. Just as a quick aside, but
Dude, for the Raptors, by the
yeah.
way.
And that's not be me pointing at any particular
Oh,
player, by the way. I'm just saying, like, I've seen different commentators and people use
right.
defensive versatility, and I'm like, okay, yes, but you also have to dig into the numbers. Statistics is a very, um, you can manipulate statistics very easily, one way or another, for people who either don't understand, or if you're misinterpreting the statistic, it can also be, kind of, it can be skewed by accident as well. So obviously, I would never accuse anyone of statistical malpractice, but just people look beyond just one metric. But with that being said, versatile on defense is one of the things that he actually happens. And I've seen him be very switchable. He has, as you said, he's switchable. I think he's probably the closest thing, maybe smaller guards, like if he was guarding Scoot, Scoot blows past everyone, right? That's just, it is what it is. But with that being said, in terms of versatility on defense and switchability, he can probably be one of the only prospects that can guard 1 through 5 from what I've seen, and do it at an NBA level, coming in relatively relatively comfortably. He was in large part on one of the best, if not the best, defensive team in college. from what I remember and what I've read about the team that he was on, but he was also the best defensive player on said team. So that is something that is important. Here's another thing is that depending on where you project him being as a fit or on a positionally, he is a really good rebounder. Now, for a 6'8" guy to be a good rebounder, you think, well, that's a no-brainer. But there are times this year that we had 6'8" dudes who were not tenacious as rebounders, and I would describe him as being a tenacious rebounder on both ends of the ball. Now, in terms of, I think he had really great hands, point of attack. He guarded those with easy. He tracks the ball well. Apex predator watching, the ball, and pounces on the prey. And defensively, like you said, he can be in different switchable situations. Then close out. He closes out with discipline.
That's going back to the basketball IQ, right? Like there's certain things
Yes.
where where he just makes things, it's just like it's just natural to him. And also from a physical standpoint, this kind of more your area expertise is like there's a fluidity to him, whereas a lot of 6'8", 6'9" guys might be 6'8", 6'9". I'm not
Yes.
speaking of anyone in particular. I'm just saying there's a natural fluidity. So I just don't at me. I'm just saying overall.
Yes. Exactly. And you know what? He's also good at he has very good court awareness on that, and that's one thing that I definitely noticed. And then he was really, which also made him really good at hawking at passing lanes. And I'll use the greatest buzzword, verticality.
Ah,
He showed a lot of verticality with his discipline in closeouts, but also when guys drove into him, he got really tall, didn't really get bumped off his spot. Being 230 already coming in. I don't think he needs to gain a lot more weight, to be honest. And yeah, I mean that's he was. If you compare it to, I feel bad doing this. If you compare it to like a Chris Boucher as an example, right, on defense, right, where Chris Boucher, his length and athleticism allows him to do these crazy closeouts, but sometimes you see him flying past guys.
mhm,
This guy's getting the closeout, but never flying past the guy.
right. Yeah,
So
no, yeah. I think with him, and I think it's gonna be interesting. I'd be curious to see when we get this as part of the discussion, like how much potential you see him, reaching to. Like, it's like, I guess your comp will kind of give an idea, indication of where you see him, because that's the other part about this equation. It makes it very sometimes difficult to assess him because what type of player do you think you're getting in this case in the long run, and some of these things that we're talking about the defensive end, you can see some really magical things if he really, if you get in the right position in the right area. I wouldn't be surprised he's like an all defensive team type of, you know, candidate. Like if you get him in the right type of scheme.
yeah, I mean he has a lot of skills that you like, and that I maybe I overvalue defense. Maybe that is what it is, but although not lately.
Hey man, the name of the game is put the ball in the bucket, right? Like it's all said.
Yeah, buckets, 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 and
Yeah.
KFC, give me a sponsorship, please. It's one of those things where I think we could use less redundancy. Before I get into comps, I'm gonna ask you actually where, because I said that you would laugh. So who do you think I would comp him to?
Who would you copy to? Bam.
Ooh, Bam is an interesting one actually. So I didn't think about Bam, although thinking about my comp, it might not be that far away. It is actually a Raptors player that I comped him to, but with some modifications on that. So I'll just tell you, Precious.
Oh,
But
really? That
yeah,
crossed my
so
mind too, actually, a little bit, but okay.
yeah, so it was Precious, but with better basketball IQ, softer hands, and actually Precious has a decent handle. I think the handle's improved, but I
Yes.
think overall his feel for the game is at a much higher level than Precious.
Mhm.
All respect to Precious, I think Precious probably has a higher burst and more athleticism than him. But his ability to guard 1 through 5 reminds me so much of Precious. Um, and so yeah, I do think that he would be a much more, as I think I wrote here, much more refined version of Precious.
Mm,
Uh, and he did show those the improvements in his shot from high school till now. So shooting 34% from I think 3-pointer. I don't have the stats up in front of me at
mhm,
this exact moment. I'm also, by the way, oh, so yeah, the Ringer has his. They're one of the ones that does has have his wingspan at 7'2",
mm.
and they say that he's 240, which is he's hefty.
Yeah,
He's
he's got a man's physique already. That's why I say
yeah.
it pops when you see him on TV. So that didn't surprise me. I'm pretty good at eyeballing what a guy's size is. And we talked a little bit about George. What I wasn't really smelling what some people were listing. I was like, that doesn't look like a 185 guy. Then I got confirmation for Rafael Barlow talking to him. It's like, okay, he's like 20 pounds heavier, maybe 25 pounds heavier. It's like, yeah, that's what I see in the video. So like same thing here. 240 does not surprise me. Like he looked like he could move some furniture. Like he's no joke. Like that's one thing you don't have to worry about. Him filling out or anything like that or getting knocked around. He'll be ready to go the moment he goes in the game. That's why
Yes.
I felt Bam in this case here because I think Bam was pretty physically ready. I think Bam also too is a very high IQ defender. Obviously, maybe he's a little more switchable than Bam. Bam probably could play 4 out of 5 to defend. I don't think Bam can really defend a point guard,
Yeah.
really. I think you give anything from 2 and up. Yeah, I think Bam could get away with that. Offensive side, Bam wasn't really that refined. He didn't come in as that. He's improved his offensive game, and I can see the same thing with him. If anything, he's got a bit better foundation. To be fair to Bam, even when Bam was coming in college, the 3-point shot for bigs wasn't necessarily as identified as something as a skill set you need to do as it is today. So it's amazing how things have even changed in the last like 5, 6 years. You
Yeah.
know.
Do you almost see him like? Because it's funny. It's almost like I forget which thing that I was reading, but some people think that he's like almost like could be at worst a small ball five, which again, which is why I thought of Precious, and the Bam thing makes so much sense too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for the Raptors, I'll be honest, I don't. He's lower down because again, I think we have it covered, and I think if Koloko can do what I think Koloko can do,
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I think Koloko has the foot speed that you don't necessarily need another guy
Mm-hmm.
who's going to be a 2-year offensive project.
Right.
I think the closest thing to an offensive project would have been Gigi Jackson, and that's mainly because of his playmaking
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say playmaking, his decision making. Whereas this guy, it's like he has the feel, but it's like there's the skill that might not be there. And if I were to put the two side by side, although Gigi is also he's an interesting prospect. By the time this comes out, the Gigi Jackson thing will be will be posted. I still lean away from these two types of guys, particularly Wallace. So between the two of them, who would you pick between Gigi and Wallace? I guess.
I think if we just had the like say it's a blank sheet and we're just saying let's put it this way. If I'm thinking future in this case here, and I say Scotty is my centerpiece, if that's what he becomes, I think I prefer Gigi. There's just the shooting in this case here and the offensive versatility in my mind. It just plays better with Scotty than having another guy that could potentially be a spacing issue in the future.
Again, that's another reason why I lean away. It's kind of weird because it's like on a team that has a lot of 6'8" athletic dudes. I don't mind having a 6'8" athletic dude if they can shoot and create rim pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's for me on offense, it's the by comparison to others, the lack of a burst. He has athleticism that's functional, but it's the lack of the burst
Mm-hmm.
where I say offensively
Right.
I don't know if we can stand a weight.
Right. There's like 4 guys in my mind are kind of like the same range. They're different types of player in some ways, but
Hmm.
I I think I'm in the same area where they would be on a team. Actually, three. I would say I would move Jet Howard out of there. Let me put the other 3 guys. So him, Gigi, and Hendricks. right? And if you had to tell me if who I had to choose between the three of them, off top, I would take Hendricks one, Charlie GG two, and and Jarace three in this case. So
Yeah, I think instantly, while Wallace has a better handle than Hendricks, I would actually, just the fact that he can shoot really well at a high level right now today without anything else. If he just becomes literally just a 3 and D player, I
right,
think Hendricks is perfectly fine. He's not
right,
as switchable, but he can still guard probably some fives with if he fills out a little bit more. That no one's guarding Embiid, no one's really guarding Giannis, even though Giannis, while he's not really, well, he's kind of used as a small ball five at times, but um, so I think that Hendricks is who I would lean towards in that sort of situation. Now, if you're comparing him to Cason Wallace, who we haven't gotten to, or Grady Dick, who we have covered, well, you know where I'm leading.
yeah, yeah, it's a different element altogether. To be fair to him, I think I just think of the
Yes.
guys are considered to be quote power forwards, and it's interesting you bring up Whitmore because I mean, even though they have about the same height, around the same height, I mean, an inch or so difference,
Yep.
because of I'd be curious the weight because I know I have an idea how much Whitmore probably weighs. It's probably probably a few pounds less in this case here, but the style of play is in my mind is very different. I see him as a small forward. You know,
Yes. Yeah. So Whitmore, I believe I've seen 232
two
was the
thirties what I
last.
had in my head exactly what I had in my head. Two
Yeah.
thirties. This
But
eyeball
like, yeah, the way that he moves, he just
right.
like
He
powers
moves
through
like
guys.
right. He moves like a natural big wing, like
Yeah, which if you want to compare him to a guy like OG, for example, like OG has the ability to, at times power through guys, but the way that Whitmore powers through guys is it's different. It's
mhm.
it's it's very different. So yeah, I mean that's kind of what do you have any final words? I know this one seems a little shorter because
Like I wish Mr. Walker well. I hope everything works out in this case here. I mean, as I said before, I am fascinated. He's the type of guy I think that if you're a team that's a little bit like around that area, but you don't want to pick him, you
mhm.
could probably make a deal for someone who really wants him. You get the old classic swap situation. Like I could easily see that playing out on draft day with him, where someone really likes him, but they don't think they're high enough to get him, but you don't really want to take him as your first choice if you're in that position, and I can see a swap going on where it's like, okay, you take him, and I'll take your guy, two spots down maybe or something like that, or just right after you, and we can make a little deal, kind of like a classic Carter Antoine Jameson situation. Like I can see that playing out.
I think that that's actually going to happen a little bit more this draft than it has in the past. Well, not that it has happened in the past, but usually it happens more in the teens. I think you could see that more often. I mean, actually, if you go back to the Luca draft, speaking of recent
Six,
things,
right? Yeah.
it's not that far fetched that it
Right.
happens,
No.
and sometimes it works out for both teams.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, I would say more often than not, it does actually work out for both teams.
Mhm.
Now, I'm going to give you like three teams outside of the Raptors. Um, one, I know you're going to say no because of the comments that their star has made. But if you were the GM, would you draft the guy or would you make the trade? Um, Portland.
Ooh, boy, Portland. Honestly, if everything's even and and there's nothing the outside noise,
Yep.
he's actually a pretty good fit for Portland.
Yep.
Portland is actually one of the few teams in the top 10 that I think could use his skill set.
He is literally like the guy that they
Yeah,
that
yeah,
could work for them.
exactly. Yeah, like if you had to tell me which was the most needed player team that could use him, that would be the first team on my list.
Yes. Okay. Two more teams. Indiana.
Possibly as well too. The reason why I say so, all their offense is so wing and guard dependent. Like right now, they don't necessarily need to have a guy that scores a lot in the front court, and he could be a guy. It could be a little more physical on the inside because they have a guy who shoot threes from the center position.
Yep.
And he could do a lot of damage in there if he gave us some mismatches in the paint. In this
And
case
he's
here,
still
like
a tenacious rebounder too,
yeah.
right?
So I can see them as also picking him. So like it's strange how it works out that maybe he might, you can see the rationale why people think he might go no further than maybe seven. Because you're just mentioning two teams that would be in that neighborhood. It's
Yep.
hard for me to see one, the two of them already passing on him if he's there.
Now I'll give you a final team, and this is going to make you smile.
I know you're going on here. This one. I
And
thought it was
you know where I'm going because I'm going as far as they said he's marked at 10th as the
yes,
lowest. So Dallas.
yes. Honestly, anyone can actually say, be able to put some resistance on defense, I will take and could potentially block some shots. I suspect you could be a good rim runner too in this as well. Potentially, we'll see. I'm not sure it's really his strength at the moment, but he can. If he continues to work on that 3-point shot, that's never going to hurt. With the type of team that Dallas has, and the rebounding, as you said before, the rebounding.
Yes. I mean, you look at a team like Utah, I don't really see it. Washington, I don't even know what they want to do. Washington's weird. Uh,
Well, Washington could be a spot, right? Because I
they
know
could be a spot. It's just I don't know.
might be
I
moving
have
on,
no
right? So
read. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
Washington. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's Washington, so you really never know. Yeah, I get your point. Yeah, but there's a few teams that could use some front court help, and like, yeah, those 4 teams. Like, I would throw Washington plus the 3 you mentioned. I could
Yep.
easily see any of them looking at him if he happened to be on the board for them.
Charlotte's another one that's very interesting that I think that could make a move. You
I
know,
would. The only thing I would say with Charlotte is that for 2 reasons. One, they just picked up Mark Williams last year.
true.
So so he's like a taller, bigger version. Obviously, he doesn't shoot like him, but the rebounding and stuff like that, he's tenacious at that. And then the second part is obviously they have the situation with Bridges, so they're gonna need some shooting or someone that could score to help.
Are they going to bring him back? Because there was.
I don't know. That's a whole. Once again, there's 2 teams in the top 10 that have ownership decisions to make that are going to make things very interesting at this draft.
Yeah, at least that. Yeah, yeah.
So who knows? Did the new ownership want that mess? Does the old ownership want to deal with that mess? I don't think anyone wants to deal with that mess, right? It's like,
I don't think that they should want to deal with the mess, but I mean,
someone's got to deal with it one way or the other, right? So, like,
there have been stranger things. Let's say that.
exactly. Jordan's either going to deal with it or whoever buying it got to deal with it. It's the discussions and for folks that have, higher pay grades than us, but that's yeah,
I'm
I
glad
mean,
that that's not my
right.
decision. I will.
Both teams, yeah, they and Portland have some interesting decisions to make for different reasons, but it definitely is going to skew how they handle things moving forward.
Yes. So yeah. Anyways, I guess with that being said, there's not really much else to talk about in terms of a Jarace Wallace standpoint. So, yeah, are there any final parting words as it relates to the draft or Jarace Wallace specifically today? I guess.
No, I think with him, I think it is what it is. I think he is what you get. Like, I don't think there's any surprises with his game, which is
Yep.
good in some ways too. If you want plug and play, and he could probably play pretty quickly on your team in some form or fashion, and there's positives of that. I just don't know. If his high end in my mind is like Bam, it's not the worst thing in the world if you're Bam out of bio. That's what you're confident. So that's which is a guy in this case could be potentially a star player, but not literally a guy that's going to be a franchise building type of guy.
Now I'll just to stretch this out a little bit more before we go to an outro here.
Mhm.
One last question. We haven't gone to this prospect. It's it's our guy, I'll say, because everyone seems to like him. Wallace.
Mhm.
Okay, you're the Raptors. You get called by. Okay, I'll give you 2 positions. Indiana calls you.
Mhm.
Do you? You're taking up the call, obviously. Are you trading up to get Wallace to guarantee that you would get Wallace? And then if it was the Portland, if it was the number 5 pick, as an example, again, are you trading to get Wallace, or is that, in your opinion, too high of a jump for Wallace?
I'm trading to get the pick. To get Wallace might be a bit higher than I would anticipate. We'll see how things look in the next month. I feel 5 is a bit high.
So you would rather. There's guys that you would prefer if you were able to get that second pick, where it's the
Yeah.
fifth.
Your buddy, Cam, it would be definitely the first on my list.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, Cam. Yeah. That's who
yeah,
I look at as the guy to identify if in that neck of the woods, because I think we've discussed it offline. a lot of the other guys are like a lot of question marks about the other guys are in the top 5 or 6 guys, and I think Wallace could be a little further down. You might be like, yeah, if you don't get him, I think there's other ways to go about getting a point guard if you need to get one, obviously. So I own like I hear you. I like Wallace as well too, but I'm not sure if I want to go all the way up to the 5 or 6. Now, as I said before, a month from now, it might your hand might be forced. I
Yeah.
mean, there are already some boards that have him around 6 or 7 right now. So we'll see. At the moment, the first 5 or 6, even 7, seem to be pretty firm. So I find it hard to believe he's going to crack that. But if he does crack, I think the guy we spoke about today is the guy who's going to be losing out. I think.
Yeah, and then the other one, I believe I know the answer, but I'll still Grady. Same question.
Let's put it this way. I would do it more likely for Wallace than for Grady.
Right.
If
And
for
either
me.
way, you're not losing your pick in these.
Right, yeah, yeah. But if I was gonna do it, I would do it for Wallace more than Grady.
Okay.
I
All
think
right. All right.
yeah, there's a little more of a ceiling, I think, on Grady than there is on Wallace,
I
perhaps.
I agree with you. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think it's kind of what you see is what you get, as you were saying, but that's not a
I say
bad
it's
thing.
the high end. Yeah, and folks at home, I mean, my high end for him is that if everything works out, he could be some version of Clay Thompson if that's the case. Like
Yeah.
literally, that's why I said so. Like, and he wasn't
Yep.
like he wasn't like looked at as like the best thing coming out of school either when he came out. So I just saying. So don't be surprised. You heard Herder, which is a nice player, but
Yep.
that's
That was my comp herder.
like Herder, Clay Thompson. You kind of see the type of style player we're talking about here, right? So like those are not bad players in this case, obviously.
Precisely. So yeah, I mean, with that being said, I guess we'll close out this episode again, people. I hope you like this one. We are kind of going through into some of these higher tier prospects. I will probably be covering Scoot Henderson soon, because I do think that there are some scenarios where we could get Scoot, where we could get Brandon Miller. I might wait for Brandon Miller. I'm not going to make any jokes about.
Oh, no.
Leave it at that.
We don't want to go there with that.
But either way, I think that this is an interesting draft. It's one of the most interesting off seasons that I've ever experienced as a Raptor, and I've been a Raptors a fan or been watching the Raptors for quite some time. And so I think that there's a lot of directions that we could go in, depending on what camp you rely on. What I will say, with that being said, again, I don't know when this is going to come out, but it's probably going to come out relatively soon after filming this. So there will be playoff basketball. Definitely check out the playoffs and enjoy. So with that being said, like, comment, subscribe. Hope you like this video. And thank you for joining me again, as always, Beyond. So yeah.
No,
All right.
thank you.
Peace. And